Hello, everyone. This is Mark Plaster, Senior Executive Editor of Emergency Physicians Monthly, and you're listening to EP Talk, the place where ER docs kind of talk about things that are important to us. And my guest today is Mike Silverman, my longtime friend and author of Director's Corner, one of our editorial board members and my former boss. And he has made his name nationally famous through that column and the book of the same title. So I'm really pleased to have Mike one-on-one. I get to talk to him every month, but it's with the editorial board. So this time I like to pick his brain and on a particular issue that's important to me. But thanks for joining me, Mike. I know you have a busy schedule.
Hey, thanks so much. It's always good to talk to you and have this kind of interaction. I never know what you're going to ask, but I'm sure we'll have a lively discussion.
Well, I have a very specific reason to ask you. I mean, this is a general question that applies to a lot of people but this specifically applies to directors, okay? Mm-hmm. Because we're coming into the summer season, and you remember that I made my career off of being a locums and running around the country and helping people in staffing crises. And so we're coming out of the pandemic where everybody's staffing was slashed, and now it seems as though volumes are starting to come back up. Sometimes they're coming up very rapidly, and now we have the double whammy of the summer when everybody wants to be off. And we have the increased people are coming back to the emergency departments because now, quote, COVID is over. We know better than that, but that's the case right now. And I wanted to explore with you the concept of basically plussing up your staffing reserve. You know, it seems to me, and it's been 30 years since I was a director, so this is the reason why I'm throwing the question at you. It seems to me that we staff just to the level, maybe even a little bit below, and ask guys to come in and fill out, the extra shifts and stuff. And I'd like to pick your brain on the idea of why don't we have 25% more than what we actually need on our staffing roster, so that we can flex. Let's just talk about that. I want to pick your brain on that.
Sure. So thanks for having me. It's an interesting concept. A year ago, volumes were dropped. Maybe a year and a half ago, volumes were dropped, and we're all have way too many docs looking for hours.
Yep.
And we think 10 years from now, ACEP tells us we're going to be massively overstaffed with emergency physicians, and there's a crisis looming in terms of our staffing being overstaffed. But like you said, it seems like every summer you're either on vacation or working your butt off. I said the correct word on that, but working your butt off. And, I've been a director now more than 15 years, and it's the same no matter what happens. I have a bunch of people starting this summer, but they're not going to start till August 1st or later.
Right.
And my one or two that might leave are going to leave June 1st, so they can have a little bit of summertime. Right. And it just leaves me short in the summer. Yep. And it's crazy to me. Yeah. So with that in mind, let me first say, I am a fan of part-time doctors. I think there is an opportunity to overstaff to some extent, but it's kind of managing the weeds of that make it so challenging to do.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I want you to get into the weeds of that because it seems to me like there's a lot of reasons from the doc's perspective. You give me the pluses and minuses from the director's perspective, but I can tell you from a doc's perspective, it's great to have privileges or be at least part-time, even if you're full-time someplace. If you have privileges or you're on the part-time staff at other places that you might go frequently, you go to visit your in-laws, okay? You may not want to be sitting in the house all week long talking to your in-laws. I'm nothing against in-laws, but at the same time, if you had an excuse to be out of the house and you could go work a little bit, make a little bit of money, and buy off, buy a car, or what I'm saying, just have some extra money. If you were on staff there and you just called up and said, hey, I'm going to be in town for a week. Anybody wants to take some time off? I'm available. You might find one or two, shifts, just enough to be out of your mother-in-law's hair for a night or two or a day or two or something like that. And it'd be a win-win.
So let's start with the concept. So as background, my first full-time job, and then even when I was a chair, I had part-time privileges at another site. I'm a believer in that. I like the idea of having privileges elsewhere. That way, you get fired tomorrow, you might have a place to go work.
That's right.
And I worked early on. I probably worked 3 to 5 shifts a month at my part-time job, so that I could have some extra income, pay off my loans, work with residents, trauma center, all the reasons why you might want to have a different environment. The first challenge is, how do you kind of manage those schedules? I might, for my site, I need my part-timers say, hey, give me a weekend, give me a couple of days that you can work, I'll build you into the weekend, but their schedule may not be done yet at their main site. And so it's how many schedule requests are you allowed and how do you juggle that? And it's a little bit different than saying, hey, I'm going to go to Virginia Beach 1 week a quarter and I'd like to do a couple shifts there, because I know I'm going to be there on vacation.
Sure.
So I think that's one of the challenges, just how do you kind of block out your time? And I think another challenge is, particularly if you're in different groups, and I'll come back and talk about being in the same group in a minute, but if you're in different groups, are there, requirements for this hospital? What extra homework do I have to do to maintain my privileges at this site? What, the stroke CME may be different. I might need ATLS and I don't need it at my other site. How much extra stuff are you getting there? So on the personal level, I think it's a little challenging. And I think there's also, there has been a change in how much people want to work. I think 20 years ago, I think we worked a lot more than most of my new docs want to work now in terms of numbers of shifts.
Yeah.
And so they're not necessarily looking for, hey, I want this part-time gig, I'm going to pick up a couple shifts.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the obstacles we're dealing with, and we'll talk about. Let me talk about So I work for a group that runs a bunch of emergency departments in Northern Virginia and the DC metro area, and everybody is cross-credentialed at least one other site, so that if there is disaster among a staff, you have that flexibility to kind of flex up. I have one of our sites nearby is short going into the summer. I have several providers that are credentialed there, and they got the request, hey, are you interested in going over and picking up shifts?
Sure.
But even in their mind, it might be a different EMR. It's going to be new nurses that you don't really know. And a lot of people don't have that mentality that you had that made you such a successful locums, of being able to go in, flex everything and take over. So I think there's some personality nature involved. There's the comfort of being in your own place. There's the kind of additional hassle factor of scheduling.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I have a couple PRN people who work pretty regularly for me. I'd like to have a couple more who can help absorb some of that mix. Yeah. But it's a challenge.
Well, I'm in the process really of trying to convince directors like yourself to take the extra time and effort to have not just 1 or 2, but maybe 20%. And I think that when you schedule everybody, well, I want to step back just a second and address something you were talking about. One of the reasons why people go into emergency medicine is to have time off. in some fashion. You know, you walk out of the hospital, you're not carrying a beeper. You can go party, you can do whatever you want to do, because next time you work, you know exactly when it's going to be. They don't have, you're not on a leash. And the other aspect of emergency medicine that was actually more in vogue when I went into training years and years and years ago was that you could either work a whole lot, you know, and make a boatload of money, or you could work a lot less and have a lifestyle that was a little bit more enjoyable. And so the idea of exactly how many hours were required or expected was pretty flexible in emergency medicine. And that was really attractive to me, and it's attractive to a lot of guys or women as well who want to be able to flex in and flex out of their career. And so I'm sort of trying to talk to directors and say, let's be realistic about how rethink staffing, the idea of what full-time is, maybe, and do some formulas that are hour dependent. If somebody says, I only want to work 50% of the time, I only want to work 85% of the time, instead of forcing that square peg in a round hole, just say, okay, that's how many we've got. And when you hit that number, you're fine. And if we've got more people than that, it's almost like rotating staffing, you know, where you staff up as much as you're the first people that are in line, you're full-timers, you know, and they have an expectation that I'm going to get 40 hours, 160 hours this month. And then after that, it goes to the pool. And then the pool then is able to step in. Now, absolutely, you're right. They have to have the kind of mentality that I had when I was a full-time locums. I could walk into a place and say, you know, where's the coffee pot? Where's the toilet? You know, which staff member should I coddle to? You know, should I be very careful about, and that sort of thing. And where's the charts? What's the chart flow? And you know, and you're right. So especially if it's an EMR that you're not familiar with, that's a whole different ball game. You know, if you walk in and you go, can't find, I don't know how to order anything here. You know, that becomes a handicap. But if you say this is what, if there's an orientation to to your EMR that everybody has to do on their own time, you know, so that they can ramp up and speed up to use your EMR, then maybe that's not such a big problem. Obviously, the medical staff or the medical staff won't know who that guy is. But it was funny. I found as a locums, I went to some places that I was there enough that they thought I lived there, and and no, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't live in Joplin, Missouri. You know.
Right. So you raise interesting points. We use Epic at my site. I feel that I could comfortably go to another place that uses Epic, particularly if there's Dragon, and get through the day. I think there is an investment of time. So if you are a physician who's looking for more free time and a little bit of control over your schedule, and you say, hey, I'm going to get privileges at 5 sites, and I'm going to try to give each of them 2 or 3 shifts a month so that I can control my schedule a little bit better, do what I want to do in my free time. I think you can do that, but for each of those sites, there's the investment of paperwork getting credentialed, there's the investment of the orientation process, whatever that is, but it will include, probably several hours of online training for the EMR and other things, probably an orientation shift or 2. So there's a big time commitment. So the payoff has to be, you have to be thinking kind of a long-term game of 6 months from now, I'm relatively comfortable in each of these sites. I'm giving their scheduler my availability, and I'm doing these shifts. I have a couple APPs who schedule that way. They work at a variety of sites, and they kind of give us their availability, and they work as much or as little as they want, and they get control over their schedule that way. And I think that is a really nice option that is not as common among docs that I'm seeing now as I think it was years ago.
Yeah.
I will say that on the director side, and just kind of throw this out there, I'm currently going through my OPPE credentialing process. So that's the ongoing professional practice evaluation that we have to do every 6 months to satisfy Joint Commission requirements that I'm checking off that my docs are qualified or and my APPs are qualified. And so for my people that I don't have enough data on, so my part-timers who maybe did 3 shifts in 6 months and don't have a big enough N, I'm now stuck trying to get their current medical director or someone else to sign off on them.
Gotcha.
And so that's added literally 2 hours to my week over the past week of trying to just navigate, because I have a lot of part-time credentialed people because they're cross-credentialed from other sites within my group. But
Right.
it's just an extra headache as a medical director as to, all right, what am I doing now?
Right.
I don't even have, one of the guys, he got credentialed right for the pandemic. He's never worked a shift for me because we were overstaffed. I don't even have an active email for him.
Well, okay. Yeah.
So there's the director side of this as well. And
Yeah.
you know, you need part-timers who are going to come in and kind of live the mission and vision of the hospital and patient care and care about the metrics. And so for my part-timers that do work regularly, they get it. They know what we're talking about,
Sure.
and it's a good fit.
A mass casualty incident can strike anywhere, even in the smallest town. Is your emergency department ready? It's a sobering question. The Center for Emergency Medical Education can help you prepare. Join us from September 7th through September 9th in Tampa, Florida for live mass casualty incident training designed just for rural and community hospitals. Immerse yourself in 2 days of realistic, action-packed, high-volume scenarios and an optional half-day hands-on procedural skills pre-course. Identify the resources, personnel, equipment, and procedures your hospital would need to respond effectively to a mass casualty incident. Learn new skills through hands-on training at the University of South Florida's Center for Advanced Medical Learning and Simulation, a state-of-the-art world-class facility. This mass casualty incident course is designed for emergency department physicians, nurses, and advanced practice providers who work at rural or community hospitals. Continuing medical education credits are available for physicians. Learn more and register online at ceme.org. That's ceme.org.
I want to throw another idea at you, another way of looking at this. Okay, being at my age, at the end of my career, my clinical career, there are a lot of guys that, both from a director standpoint, you would like to see go. Okay, they're ready to go, and maybe they don't
go as in leave medicine.
Yes. Okay. We're just going to say it. Okay. You know, you're outlived your usefulness here, or, you know, you're, yeah. And you may have thought that about me. You never know. I'm not going to ask you. But nevertheless, you know, there is a certain number. We're talking about a manpower issue here. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain number of people in the group that really need to back off, would like to back off, or maybe need to be prepared when they walk in the door and say, you know, I'm done, you know, mm-hmm. and I'm just not going to do this anymore. And instead of giving you 6 months, because you know how long it takes to get somebody in there, you know, mm-hmm. as you say, credential, find the right guy, that sort of thing. And right. one of the things that part-time staff and locums gives you an opportunity to do as a director and as the physician is essentially clinically try out, and that right. is somebody who's sort of playing with the idea of coming to Northern Virginia. I'd like mm-hmm. to see what it's like to work for Mike Silverman, and let's see whether he's the ogre that everybody says he is.
Exactly.
You know, find out what, because you can't determine those sorts of things on a weekend interview. You can't.
Right. Right. No, I agree with you completely. So let's go back to the older docs who you know they're leaving in the next 6, 12, 18 months. They're going to retire, and they like working. They like having the paycheck. And so behind the scenes of our editorial board meetings, I've been talking to Judy Tintinelli, trying to turn that concept into a column as to what are the indicators when I should retire, what are the indicators to the director that, hey, you should have that talk with the doc. And so that obviously hasn't materialized because it's not published, but it is a really, really interesting concept, is managing the end of the career and when is it time to go and what are the signs. With that said, we all know we probably have, every site has one older doc who's just
been there.
Right, on the edge. So there is that. We all know we're going to have turnover. We all know as directors, we're going to have turnover essentially every year. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to move. There's always something going on. And preparing for that is key. And you're right that you cannot really adequately get to know someone and how they're going to fit in a 2-hour or 4-hour interview, and even going out to dinner. And so hiring part-timers, so you really get to know them and they get to try out the place and see what a great place it is, or say, oh my God, this is awful. I'd never work here full time. I think it's great. And again, I'm not opposed to your concept of hiring up on this 20%. So for me, I have, let's say 17 active docs. So for me to get 3 to 4 regular part-timers,
that's probably
I'd be good with that. It certainly make my summers better. But you have to have the part-timers that are interested in saying, hey, I'm going to work a couple days a month. I'm going to commit to this in addition to what's probably my full-time job, because I want the extra income, or I want the experience at a different site, or I know I'm going to be up here. But they have to have some continuity in the system so that they're efficient. My belief is it takes about 45 shifts to get efficient in your system.
4 to 5 or 45?
45. It's about 3 months of full-time work to really really understand the EMR, really understand the patient flow, get to know the nurses, get to know the hospitalists and the intensivists and everybody else, and kind of have that comfort of, I know how to troubleshoot problems. My speed is really good now. I'm kind of up to where I should be. Those first 3 to 7 shifts, you could be at 1.2 patients an hour when you're used to being at 2 patients an hour. And everything's kind of clunky.
Right.
So it's a few months to get up there. So you really need a regular part-timer who, again, is kind of like you and super flexible, low maintenance, show me what I need to know, let me go to work, to be successful with that early on.
A lot of it, I can just simply say that in my career, a lot of it had to do with being an agreeable kind of person. You had to put on your game face that you're serious, you're not in here to play, in here to work, but at the same time, I want to work with you. And it's where I really discovered how much the nursing staff can be a bunch of sharks in a feeding frenzy if you mess with them. If you have to have agreeable nurses who are going to support you, or you're going to die. You are just going to die. And so I think that part of my success over the years was that I was very sensitive to that. And as a result, I always got a tremendous amount of nursing support. If I didn't know how to do something from a transfer, call a helo, call what's the setup here? Do we call EMS to transfer them to the landing zone, or what do we do? And so I always got a lot of very generous nursing support from that standpoint. And if somebody doesn't get that, you can be in a world of hurt in a very, very busy ED. And I found that as well a couple of times, and it was catastrophic. It does speak to the fact, though, that the quote orientation period has to be a lot more specific than along the lines of what you just said. Some of those unusual circumstances or interpersonal issues, and how to navigate those in the warm-up period. How to take that, how to get those. What do you learn in 45 shifts? That's so critical. And can you shorten that down to 10 or 15 just by being focused on it, or do it offline? But the idea that we need to have flexibility is something that I think that emergency physicians really need to have. We need to rediscover that. the really solid groups, they're groups who have been there, and the same guy's been there for 20 years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that sort of inflexibility gives them a real headache if somebody suddenly gets sick, somebody gets pulled out for military duty. We have more and more women who get pregnant and want to take maternity leave, and suddenly that group is now called upon to fill in all that extra time. Basically, if half of your I was in a group that did this not too long ago. Half the group were women, and 3 of them got pregnant at once.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the director was going to kill himself.
Right. There's nothing worse than being short-staffed, and I've always had the attitude that I'd rather be kind of 1 doc overstaffed, 1.5 docs overstaffed from where I need to be, because then you can cover all your vacation comfortably, and nobody's stretched too thin. There's months where you might not get all the hours that you want, but I find that people are generally happy to work less every 3rd month than to be asked to work more 2 out of every 3.
Yeah.
And my site's a little bit short right now, and we're all feeling it. We're all, including myself. I'm working a bunch more than I would like to clinically while managing administrative stuff. And so I am reaching out to my part-timers and saying, hey, what about this? What about this? Just tell me what you can do. I'll pretty much take anything.
Yeah.
But I think lots of places right now are in that same boat where we're struggling with catching back up.
Yeah, Mike, I know that you probably can identify at least to some degree with this. One of the places that I was a director at, the contract actually said that I personally had to guarantee coverage of every shift. Okay, meaning that if somebody dropped out, okay, it was my responsibility to make sure that they had coverage. Didn't matter if I just finished. I turned around and you got to work another shift. You got to work another shift. They looked at me and said, it's yours. And when I said, you can't pay me enough to do that.
The first time I got a medical director's contract, and it said, as medical director, you're responsible for these things, and one of them is ensuring 24/7 coverage of the emergency department, which basically says it's me or I find someone else. So, I wrote a column several months ago on the importance of having an on-call schedule, and because I watched a good friend of mine is a medical director, and he was away for a weekend. I think it was celebrating an anniversary or Father's Day or something, and someone had called out, and before he knew it, he was driving back from the beach and going to work a night shift. And then they implemented a call schedule shortly thereafter. But you have to start with the right number of bodies. You have to have a pool that you can draw from, so that when things are going crazy with, hey, 2 people got a GI bug and this is going on, and someone's away out of the country on vacation, they're not coming back.
A tree fell across the road and I couldn't get in. Remember that?
Yeah, the tree. I certainly remember that. I worked all day, and then my relief was stuck and couldn't get off the island. I don't remember who came in, but I know someone came in. I was done.
Yeah. Well, otherwise, and it goes all the way back. The very, very first time that I did a locum shift, I decided that I was going to try to see what was out there. And I sent out a whole bunch of faxes. This was almost 35 years ago. Sent out a bunch of faxes in Delaware. I'm not going to say where it was, but and saying that I was available to do locums work. Within 30 minutes, I got a call, and they said, we can do the schedule, we can do the credentialing on an emergency basis. Can you possibly work tomorrow morning? This was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 11 o'clock noon. And I said, sure, I'll be down there 7 o'clock in the morning. About an hour later, I got a call back, and they said, is it possible that you can come tonight? Which revealed to me that not only did they not have anybody for tonight, they didn't have anybody for tomorrow at 7.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I went down there and I told the scheduler this. I said, okay, if you don't call me by 5 o'clock to tell me who's coming in for me at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to call the radio station and tell them that the ER is closed. Okay. That's kind of
friends.
Yeah, I said I'm not doing a 24 at this place. This is not possible. I'm not going to be able to do that. And it was a continuous working environment. You thought you can sit down and cruise through the night, because I didn't. Right. And sure enough, they called me at 5 and said, we're flying a guy in from Michigan to take the 7 a.m. shift. And he arrived, came walking in. And you know what? He was the owner of the group. That was it was a contract group, and he was the owner of the group, and he lived in Michigan. And he flew in.
He was just happy. He was happy he didn't have to work the night shift. Yeah, so to kind of put it in some perspective, I think on the director side, I think most of us are in favor of having some part-time people we can go to. It creates some additional headaches in terms of OPPE and orientation and managing people and making sure that they kind of understand what's going on and are with the program.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth it for all the things you pointed out in terms of being able to kind of get staff and give people breaks, and we're all short. I think on the provider side, on the doc side, it's, am I interested? Is there benefit in me working in another place? Am I getting something clinically out of it? Is it just an exit strategy that maybe I like it? Is it a way to break up my vacations? Because I know I'm going to go to the beach a bunch this summer. Maybe I should be doing a shift a week down at the local hospital.
Yeah.
Make some money and keep me from eating so much and getting sunburned.
Yeah.
So,
I was at I'm a sailor, and one of my favorite harbors is Nantucket. I can't afford to rent a house there, but I can sail the boat in there and stay on board the boat. And so one summer we actually were planning to be there 3 weeks actually in August. And that's what you can do when you're semi-retired. And so I rolled in there, and I happened to be in I think it was a grocery store, and I saw this guy. I chatted up with everybody and I asked him what he was doing. He said, "Well, actually, I'm here on a working vacation. I'm going to work at it's called the Cottage Hospital in Nantucket, and it's a fair-sized place actually." And I said, "What are you going to be doing there?" He said, "Well, I'm working in the ER." And I said, "What do you do? Are you an ER doc normally?" No, I'm a cardiologist.
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Really? You're gonna come in and work in the ER as a cardiologist?" And so I just paid attention, and knowing that it's an island, okay, and there's no backup out there, okay. All you have are helos taking the serious patients off. Well, we had some bad weather, okay, and so I happened to run into him at the end of the week at the grocery store again, I think. I said, "How was your week at the Cottage Hospital?" And he said that he was mortally shaken, working there, because he said, "I've never ever been in a situation like this in my entire life." He said, "I flew out 2 subdurals. I was supposed to be putting in chest tubes. I was doing all this stuff, and he said, "I will never do this again." And it was really, he was very enlightened as to what doing a quote locums in a rural setting could be like. But I encourage the guys who have worked in the settings where they have lots of backup to go out and spend a time in a rural setting. You want to talk about real emergency medicine?
Right.
That can be an eye opener. Look, but fun, and also enlightening.
I agree with you completely, and I've had these kinds of discussions with my docs. I think that everybody at some point should work at another site. I had a couple of my docs went to another site this spring. We were a little overstaffed, they were a little understaffed, and they'd been at my site 7 to 10 years and never worked anywhere else. And I think it's really valuable to see another facility. How does it work? What's the interaction like? What's the flow like? What's the patient population like? And get out of your comfort zone and go do that. And I think they both would say that they had really, really good experiences. They may not want to work there full time, but they like the experience.
Yeah.
But I think going and doing kind of that rural medicine or under-resourced is really challenging. I'll leave it at that.
Well, it's enlightening for one thing. You might find that you get to use some skills that you don't always get to do. In a busy urban hospital or a suburban hospital, because there's always somebody there to back you up. But if there's no backup, or if you don't deal with helicopter EMS all the time, it's a lot of fun to be out in a rural area. And I'm always trying to encourage people to look at rural settings. We train in urban settings, a few people do in suburban settings, but virtually nobody trains in a rural setting. And as a result of it, the people don't have a tendency to go to rural settings unless they've got relatives there or they're in the mountains and they're skiers or something like that. But not only can you do well financially and be a pretty big fish in a small pond, you can actually have a very enjoyable practice. And so I really encourage people to try to branch out and to go out into rural settings. So, well, Mike, I know you've got lots of things to do here, and I'm gonna cut it off. But I want to encourage all the directors and emergency physicians alike who have listened to this, think about going beyond the staff that you currently work with. For a lot of different reasons. You can think about the places that you might someday want to go to. You never know. You may not want to live in Kansas City your whole life. You may want to live in the mountains. You may want to live on the shore. And the best way to really tell that is go work there. Go find a group that you enjoy, and you might find that when the time comes, it's an easy transition because you've worked there over the years as one of the part-time staff that Mike's talking about. And from a director standpoint, make life easy for yourself. And I know there are some headaches, and Mike's talked about them. The training, the familiarization issues, and that sort of thing. You've got to help for that. Come on, train your staff up so that they can make sure that the folks walking in the door are properly trained on the EMR and the staff and also the various skill set you expect them to have, and keep a logbook of the things that are necessary, so people know that they're not getting blindsided about, oh, you have to have this course, or you have to have this skill, or you have to have so many intubations, you have to have so many conscious sedation, ultrasounds, or whatever it is, so that you're aware of that. I think that both from director standpoint and from the staff doc standpoint, you will find life to be a lot more enjoyable, and the adventure that emergency medicine always was for me, over my career, can be a part of our lives and actually not only facilitate working where you want to work, working when you want to work, as long as you want to work, or as short as you want to work, and really be a career that you would really enjoy. So, Mike, thanks a lot. Your expertise is always welcome, and your point of view is helpful to everybody. So thank you. And for those of you listening, watching today, thank you for joining us for EP Talk.